Hello and welcome. You buy a bottle of mineral water, across the world someone is dying. It sounds harsh, but that's how our guest today paints the picture of the inequality of life for people on this planet. He says the money you spent on that bottle of water could have saved a life. Aid agencies say that 10 million children die each year unnecessarily, and the situation for the impoverished regions only looks bleak in the current global economic crisis. Well, as wealthier nations tighten their belts, what impact will the needy feel? Would you give up small luxuries every day to change the lives of people less fortunate than you? These questions raise a debate that crosses political, social, and moral lines. On today's program, we ask, can small gestures from individuals have a significant impact on poverty? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. Log on to livestation.com/AJE, enter the chat room and then take part. And we also welcome your phone calls on the show. Well, to give us an idea of why he thinks you can make a difference, we have author, philosopher and bioethicist Peter Singer, who has taken a stand on controversial issues such as abortion, euthanasia and global ethics, often drawing as much criticism as support for his views. Well, Time magazine named Professor Singer one of the most influential people in the world, and he's perhaps best known for his book Animal Liberation, which is considered to be the founding statement of the animal rights movement. Peter Singer's new book is called The Life You Can Save, Acting Now to End World Poverty, which makes the argument that giving to those less fortunate than us will make a huge difference in the lives of others without diminishing the quality of our own. Professor Singer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
So let's start with direct advice. What can I, or many of the people watching here, be doing right now, from now on, to make a significant difference?
We could resolve to give a percentage of our income. It doesn't have to be a lot, but if enough of us would give a small percentage of our income, we could really diminish global poverty so that eventually it would become a thing of the past. I mean, I'm talking about mass global poverty, a billion people in extreme poverty. That isn't a situation that has to exist, and it exists in part because the affluent are not really doing enough to stop it.
Is it just a question of money? Because many people are very wary. They often will throw money, of course. Some people will throw money as a sort of guilt appeasement. But there's also people who say that if I give to charities, often I don't know what happens to the money. I don't see it necessarily making a direct difference. It may get swallowed up in the running of those charities. How can people be sure their money is doing some good?
Of course, it matters which charities you give it to. And we have to check those charities that they really are working directly with, at the grassroots, with the villagers, with the poor, on things like bringing them safe drinking water, providing them with methods for sustainable agriculture, providing them with basic health care. I think it's clear that those things do make a difference. I'm not saying we should just give money to governments which may be corrupt and may not get it to the people who need it. But there are good organizations out there.
Let me get an email to you we had from Germany, from Carlos Para Bosenberg in Germany, who says, We are always asked about what we can do to help the poor, but many of us have our hands tied with loans and debts. Poverty can be solved, but this needs state representation. As one of the big issues at the moment, of course, people are worried about their livelihoods, their savings, their futures. Are you worried that your campaign for more individual action is coming essentially at the wrong time? You know, when Carlos says, what about more state intervention? Do you think governments should be doing more?
If governments were to give aid really effectively and not give it to governments where they want to win political support, but really make sure it goes to the poorest of the poor, then I would favour more government aid. But there are only a few countries where the aid is that good. The United States, for example, is definitely not one of them. So that's why I'm saying that I think it's better if we find good non-government agencies and contribute to them.
And as individuals, I mean, of course, with tough times now, economic tough times, do you feel that it's kind of bad timing to be asking individuals?
Well, it's for some people. If people now have lost their jobs, they're worried about paying the rent. Yes, it's not a good time for them. But I think that's going to improve. I think we can look ahead to the future we have. For the people in extreme poverty, they can't really look ahead because they've just got to worry where their next meal is coming from.
I guess also it's a matter of scale. I mean, for someone cutting back on a coffee, from like an outlet one every day, it's different from someone not being able
exactly.
to have
we still have, despite the fact that many of us feel worse off, we still have that buffer of luxuries of the bottle of water that we buy when the water that comes out of the tap is safe to drink. So we still have some belt tightening that we could easily do.
We have a caller on the line from Germany. Marcel, what would you like to ask the professor?
Yeah, hi, Mr. Singer. I really didn't want to make a question, but just respond to the initial question if anyone can make a difference. I think anyone is able to make a difference. Just today, there were some guys from the United Nations Refugee Help Organization, and I talked to them, and they explained their work to me, and so I signed up for giving 10 euro a month
Right.
to the refugee project. So that's a direct contribution which goes to the poor people in the world. And I also have a godchild in Bolivia, for example.
Right.
And
actually, Marcel,
yeah.
thanks. It sounds like you're doing something that's very good, and that's true. I guess individuals sometimes need that motivation, that little kick.
They do. They need to really commit themselves. And I think when Marcel said he's pledged a certain amount every month, I think that's a great way to remind yourself to keep doing it. Otherwise, you might get inspired and enthusiastic. You might give something this month, but forget about it. So I think we need to make a long-standing commitment.
What's the key to the message in your book, The Life You Can Save?
I'm suggesting that if we can make it part of the normal culture of people who are affluent, to see part of living an ethical life, of living ethically, as sharing some of their income with the poor, we could solve this problem. So I've set up a website, thelifeyoucansave.com, and people can go there, and I suggest a scale of how much you should give in proportion to your income. So people with higher income would give a higher proportion.
With suggestions as to where the money should go.
Yes, and I also have a list of organizations that I believe are good, effective ones that you can give to. And I also want people to pledge publicly that they're going to do this, because if we have a lot of people doing it, I think people will feel supported. They will feel part of a community of giving, and they won't feel isolated, as sometimes people do now when they give.
I know. I mean, you apply the sort of ethical lifestyle attitude quite intensely into your own lifestyle. I mean, apart from being vegetarian, which was a lot of the founding fame for you. Tell me about the things you do that you feel have changed the way you contribute to this world.
Well, on the topic we've just been talking about, I give about 25% of what I earn to organizations that are fighting world poverty. I'm not suggesting everybody has to do that much. I'm reasonably comfortably off. I have a good salary, so I feel I can spare that and still live quite nicely on the other part of it. As you said, I'm a vegetarian, and that I think is good not just for the animals who don't suffer because of my diet, but it's very good for the environment too, because the livestock industry produces a lot of greenhouse gases. And that's another question that I think we have to think about, minimizing our greenhouse gases. So there are many ways of doing that. We might be able to commute by public transport rather than drive a car. We might be able to walk or ride a bike. We might be able to install solar hot water or even a solar electricity panel.
And you apply a lot of these things?
Yes, I do. We do that.
I'm going to get another email that came in here. This one from London in the UK. And Charles Christofini says, as far as I'm concerned, only true socialism could solve all these economic problems created by the excess of capitalism, greed, and the lack of social conscience. Wealth must be limited as poverty must be limited. This could only happen through changes in fiscal laws and human mentality. Now, and of course, I guess the idea goes for not just America and other countries, but would you advocate such a move that countries go so socialist that effectively it's part of a limitation of wealth?
No, I'm not advocating. I mean, socialism is the sense that the government appropriates the means of production and the wealth and distributes it. And I think we've seen in the past that has not worked. So I'm really advocating more of a voluntary contribution, a change of the culture of ethics rather than the state coming in. Now, I know some people may be cynical and say, well, human nature isn't like that. But I think if we work up in small steps, we may find that we can get closer to that anyway. And let me also say, I'm not advocating complete equality. I'm advocating helping those in extreme poverty. These are the people living on less than $1.25 per day, as defined by the World Bank.
It's the bottom billion, isn't it?
It's the bottom billion, exactly. It's
I guess it's more. What you're talking about is a more responsible capitalism, is it?
Yes, I think you could say that. And to go back to your question about the present economic recession, it has made people think about values in capitalism and whether, in fact, we can be more responsible within the capitalist system. And I hope that we can, and that people will actually, instead of getting their satisfaction from just expanding their consumption, consuming more. They'll get satisfaction from thinking that they're actually helping more, that they're giving more back.
Let me squeeze in one more email before we take a break. This came in from Canada on the issue of human nature, as you mentioned it, from Gil Hughes, who writes in regularly, who says, Peter Singer needs to join the real world. There's no point in beating your head over lost causes. The worst thing in the world has always been, quote, man's inhumanity to man, end quote. It's hardwired into our brains. Now, how do you reply to those who see that hard, selfish side to human nature?
I think that we have an element of selfishness. I don't deny that. I think I am a realist about human nature. But we also have an element of compassion and empathy. That's undeniable. People do act altruistically. We see it all the time. And I give some examples in my book. So I think what we have to do is to try and provide the social support to strengthen the altruistic or compassionate side, while acknowledging that the selfish side will be there, and we're not going to get rid of it.
Professor, more questions for you in a moment. We're going to pause for a short break here now. More of our discussion in a moment. As we pause, let me remind you can join the conversation with your questions and comments. Log on to livestation.com and into the chat room. There's a debate taking place there right now. We're also taking a poll in the chat room where we're asking, can individual donations eradicate global poverty? Let us know what you think in the Live Station chat room, and we'll be right back.